Welcome back. In this segment of our program, I have with me Catherine Noble. Catherine is our wonderful volunteer coordinator, and today Catherine has brought with her a guest.
Yes.
Catherine, please introduce your guest.
Well, first of all, thank you. We always like coming on Channel 6, so thank you. It's great information for the community, and we appreciate it. So my guest, I have a very special guest that I'm excited about today. We have a very new, wonderful hospice social worker here on campus. As you know, we have our own hospice here at Green Spring. So I am very privileged to introduce Jamie Johnson. He is our new social worker for hospice.
Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Jamie, how long have you been with us?
About 2 weeks.
Good.
I started on November 23rd.
And Jamie, you come to us from where?
Well, I grew up in the area, but I just moved back from Seattle, Washington.
From Seattle?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, welcome back to the area.
Thank you.
And your background is you're a social worker?
I am a social worker. My background's in multi-generational studies, so that's fancy talk for families and elders. And my concentration and my passion really is hospice work and making sure that's well known and well utilized throughout all communities.
And how did you become interested in hospice work?
Well, I was actually a volunteer with a hospice agency in college in Newport News, and I sat with this gentleman. We watched baseball games and we talked about his family. He had 13 kids and he was a ship constructor. So he had a really interesting story, and he was just a really great guy, and I fell in love with hospice and working with people of all ages. So, yeah.
And the importance of working with it.
Yeah, exactly. And, just being a friendly person for him to talk with about his concerns and his family and talk with his family. And it was great. It was a wonderful experience.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. So here at Green Spring, what does being the hospice coordinator involve?
Well, I think that would fall to Catherine.
So, Jamie is a social worker, and being a volunteer coordinator, I do work with hospice.
So the two of you work together?
We do.
Okay.
And what we try to do regarding volunteers, volunteers for hospice are a very integral part of the care, because as Jamie was mentioning, he spent time with that individual and really had great conversations. Obviously, when you're on hospice, you're ill, and you need people to come in and volunteer to just maybe sit with you, maybe just talk about your family, go through photo albums. It's just a very special bonding type of situation. I know personally when both of my parents unfortunately have passed, and they went unfortunately very quickly. They were in the hospital and we didn't have a lot of time. So we tried, 6 kids, we tried to spend as much time as we could in that, it was really only like a week or so.
And the same with mine.
Yeah,
very
so
quickly.
When you're on the other side of the coin, you realize what a gift it is to have hospice services, to be there with your loved one and to support your loved one, and maybe finding some closure, talking about things maybe that they want to talk about.
Right.
And a lot of times we hear hospice and we think, oh, yeah, I don't want to hear that. That's kind of scary. I would say, please come down to the hospice office. Meet the hospice team. Many of you in the community have already, Jane, who's a nurse in hospice here, has been here forever. She is absolutely wonderful. Mm-hmm. Come down to the hospice office. Some people might not even know where the hospice office is. So it's in this building, Village Square, down on the bottom level. It's right across from where home health and home support is, where intermissions is. So you don't need an appointment. Just come down and say hi. I just wanted to find out where the office is and meet some people.
So the difference between what the hospice social worker and the hospice volunteer would be that the hospice social worker is working more with helping the person under hospice care find the services that he or she needs, make sure that the medical care is lined up, whereas the hospice volunteer is just focusing on the person.
Yeah, the volunteer I like to think of them as a friend to the family and a support, really. They can come in and sit with the resident, give the family a break, maybe let them go on campus, get something from the cafe or see a movie, or help with laundry sometimes. giving the family a break, or just being a friend, doing life review. And sometimes with volunteers, that have similar service connections, so maybe the resident was in the Army and the volunteer was in the Army as well, they have that bond as well, and they can talk about their service together. And the social worker helps in the hospice team kind of grease all the wheels and keep everything running smoothly. So, we talk with families, check in with them, see how they're doing, seeing if they have any questions about, disease progression or what resources are in the area for them to utilize. If they have any heartache they want to talk about, or any difficult subjects that they find broaching with each other or the resident hard to do, I can help facilitate that. I talked with a gentleman the other day about his family and their perceptions on hospice, so that was a good conversation we had, and I'm more than happy to do that with any family.
So the hospice volunteer shouldn't be concerned that the hospice volunteer is going to be put in the position of being some kind of psychologist. The
No.
hospice volunteer is really more there to be a friend of the patient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'll use my mother as an example. Now, my mother was in Ohio, my brother was in Connecticut, I was here, and my sister lived about 2 hours away from my mother. None of us could be there with her a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point, and she was not in hospice care at the time, she was just elderly.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point about the last 6 months of her life where we hired someone to come and sit with her about 2 hours, 3 or 4 times a week, just to do exactly what you described, just to sit there and look at family pictures and talk about the pictures, just to be a friend, just to talk about, what her life had been, or whatever she wanted to talk about. Part of it was, after she had her 100th birthday, was to go through the 100th birthday
Wow.
cards and
100.
say, okay, who is this person? Is that the kind of relationship that a hospice volunteer would do?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are great examples.
Yeah.
And we really try to customize it according to what that resident is interested in, as Jamie mentioned, like maybe a military connection.
Yeah.
And really what the volunteer is comfortable with. We never would put a volunteer in any situation that they feel uncomfortable. We really try to make that good match. And that's where it's productive. I can tell you we had one of our hospice volunteers was with a resident, and this resident had a beautiful window and loved nature, and there was a beautiful tree outside her window, and during their visits, they talked about the tree. They talked about other types of trees, what trees you had in your yard. So it can go down different paths, but I would say, as Jamie mentioned, friend. It's a friend.
Right.
And you really do become a friend of the family as well, because it's a little bit of a respite for the family. Even if here at Green Spring, maybe it's their spouses that live together and one of the spouses is on hospice, to have the ability for that other spouse to maybe, walk around the community, go
Right.
have lunch while the volunteer is there, or maybe just go sit in another room and read a book. That's a real
Just a
gift.
little time away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. So, it's a very, I think, enriching experience for the hospice volunteers. It's hard to describe, but when you spend time with someone who is, really, at the end of life,
Sure.
it's just such a gift. You get so much in return. I'll share with you, I mentioned to Jamie, this is when I worked 20 years ago, I had, there was a hospice patient who I just became very attached to, and she loved coffee, so every morning I would bring her coffee, and we got to be great friends. And what she wanted to live to see the next Christmas, and we were in December, and I was there on Christmas Eve, and then I was off on Christmas Day, and I came back the next day, and she had passed, but you know what? She left me, she did make it to Christmas, and she left me this beautiful handmade ornament stocking, and to this day, when I put that on my tree, I just think of her.
Sure.
And so those are the gifts that you'll get in
Sure.
return.
Right.
We do train our hospice
That
volunteers.
was going to be my next question. Is
Yes.
there training for hospice
Absolutely.
volunteers?
There's much training. We walk hand in hand with the person, the volunteer. volunteer through the process. Again, we would never put someone in a situation they do not feel comfortable.
And I guess my thought would be, as part of the training, I would want to know if I found myself in a situation where I didn't feel comfortable,
Yes.
if the person became agitated or if the person had a health issue, there's training that would show me that I would know what to do in that kind of a situation.
Yes.
If I was there alone with the person and there was some kind of a health crisis, my training would give me information about what I should do in that kind of a
Absolutely.
situation.
And you know, that being said, I will tell you that doesn't happen very often, but the beauty of here at Green Spring having our own hospice is that, you know, there's pull cords. You just
right.
call. You know,
That's
if you
right.
ever feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You know, there's always someone here in the community that will be there in just, you know, a few seconds to help you. And we communicate, you know, I communicate with the hospice volunteers to make sure that they're doing well and they feel
Good.
comfortable.
So if someone wants to volunteer to be a hospice volunteer, what would one do?
So what would one do? They can come to the hospice office and maybe meet the staff and just say, you know, I'm interested, if that's more convenient for them, or they can just give me a call at my office. My office number is 703-923-3154, and my office is at Garden Ridge on the 2nd floor. They can always drop by, and you know, I can just sit down with them and walk them through the process, and we'll take it from there.
Sounds good. Thank you for coming today. Jamie, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you as well. Thank you.
We'll look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.
And we hope you'll have some volunteers to come as a result.
I hope so.
Okay, and we have a few announcements yet today.